Reverend Al Sharpton to make 2 cops being murdered about him. Nobody cares that you receive death threats. Nobody cares about you. You are the reason this is happening. Take your old, stale, troublemaking, race-baiting, tired, pathetic, perverted, coke-sniffing, no good for nobody ass somewhere and sit down. You are the problem, Al Sharpton. Nobody needs you. Nobody cares if you were threatened. You are the reason this is happening. Leave our people alone. You are a disgusting disgrace to humanity. Boycott Al Sharpton now.
Good morning, Northern California. They say we're in for another heat wave. So I'm just preparing you because you're not smart enough to know whether it's really hot or cold. So I'm giving you a heads up that it's hot. We talked a few weeks ago about the government have to explain what that moisture is on your forehead. It's called sweat. And it said, be careful if that shows up, because if too much of it shows up and you're not drinking enough water, you could collapse and die. I don't know what we did before the government, but since then we're fully informed of what water is. This is Lou Benninger, and I'm here with Leon Lampton, and we're doing a show today for you. If everything worked out correctly, if you look at your calendar this morning, it should be July 22nd, and it should be at around 9 in the morning. And so this is KNYC Radio. They like to call it the Patriot. I think by law we need to say this every once in a while, that it's 1410 a.m. so we're not trying to sneak some other kind of number in. So it's 1410 a.m. and if you want to listen on FM, you can go to 104.3. Should be simulcast. And if you're in an area like out there in the boondocks of Nevada County or Butte County or way over in Colusa County or down towards the Sacramento airport, or if you just know about it, want to listen to it, but can't get it on the radio, you can always go to the website, knycradio.com, and click on the Listen Live button, and we're streaming it. Should be streaming. Hopefully everything's working right. Streaming and stuff like that's out of our control. We just kind of put the show together, and then if it doesn't, we make a couple phone calls, and hopefully we can correct that. But normally it streams fine. And then a new thing has been happening. Chris Starkey, who has One Eye Blind Media, One Eye, EYE, Blind Media, 4 separate words. If you go to YouTube and put in One Eye Blind Media, you'll come to his site, and then you can click on playlists, and you'll see Live with Lou, and you can click on a recorded show there. So if you can't listen to all the show today and you'd like to listen to it, or you miss it, you're a regular listener and you miss a show, you can go to One Eye Blind Media and look up the one you want and listen to it. And right now, the way Chris is doing it is pretty much commercial free, I think. So you can just buzz right through it and get all the beef out of it and move on. So that's a convenient way to get it that we'd been hoping for a long time, and we thought we were going to end up doing it a different way, but Chris volunteered to do this. So thanks, Chris Starkey with One Eye Blind Media. And so we're glad you're listening. And this is a show that's broadcast out of Yuba County, one of 58 counties in California. We're located in what we hope to be the state of Jefferson. We're in the northern part of the state. We even, sometimes people say, well, if you're north of the Tehachapis, or what we call the grapevine to get to L.A., if you're north of that, that's Northern California. They'd consider Bakersfield Northern California. Well, up here in the north, we don't consider that Northern California. In fact, we think north of Sacramento is a better north for us. And we don't really include Sacramento in the state of Jefferson because Sacramento is the source of most of our problems. So if you're up here in the North State, North 20 counties, all the way up to the Oregon border, some of those counties actually wrap around the east side of Sacramento County along the Sierra Nevada mountain range foothills, we call them. So there's some folks down there like Calaveras County, et cetera, that are interested in the state of Jefferson. And there's going to be since I'm mentioning the state of Jefferson, there's a state of Jefferson meeting on the 29th of this month, starting first thing in the morning, probably 8 or 9 in the morning at Church of Glad Tidings, sort of a convocation of various branches of the state of Jefferson folks, and they're coming from all over the North State to have a chit chat on the state of affairs in the proposed state of Jefferson. And so if you're wanting to be in on that, you can pop in there. And I think it's going to be sponsored. Probably lunch is going to be offered, and there's a feeling of some of the leadership that the time we need to pull together, and there's some fractioning and factioning going on in the state of Jefferson. So what we want to try to avoid in the state of Jefferson, since I'm talking about it, slipped into it here, is that we want to not replicate the state that we have. And a lot of the problems, a lot of times we talk about the roads, and we talk about physical things, reservoirs, roads, infrastructure, no representation. But when you get down to the root cause of all that, you get to what I call sinfulness, biblical sinfulness, where people are selfish. They have ulterior motives. They tell you one thing, they do something else. And they're power hungry. They're insecure. And so they think they want to be able to tell everybody what to do and take control and make everybody kind of conform to their wishes. The Founding Fathers were more into a thing called freedom. And it's interesting how we redefine what freedom is. And so we end up defining it. Freedom is when I tell you you can do something. And so we've developed some of that within the state of Jefferson, where people are kind of getting to be like, well, I'm in control. I'm in charge. Like, you can't come, or you can't do that. And that's exactly what we don't want to foster. And all that is just mankind's sinful tendencies to be control freaks because of their insecure, fallen nature. So it doesn't mean they're bad, nasty. It just means that's not what we want to facilitate, fan the flames of, and promote in the state of Jefferson. What we want is to be inclusive. And what I mean by that is encourage people to be involved, participate, share their views, fan the flames of Jefferson throughout the state, whether it's exactly like I would do it or not, but get it on, right? A lot of, the reason you like a buffet is there's just lots of different tastes and types of food. And so one thing freedom produces, and when you compare the United States to other countries in what we call supposedly quote unquote free enterprise, one of the beauties of why we have so much stuff and technology and inventiveness and new ways of doing things and efficient ways of doing things is that we have free enterprise here, and we encourage freedom, and we encourage free research and development. We encourage companies that thrive, encourage new ideas and openness and not be insecure about change. And companies that fail get stuck in the mud. Cities that fail get stuck in the mud. Churches that fail get stuck in the mud. But in the state of Jefferson, what we want to do is go back to what the founding fathers were in favor of, and that is leave people alone. Just leave people alone. Let them farm the way they want. Let them ride their horse the way they want. Let them raise their families the way they want. Just leave people alone. And let people be inventive and come up with new ideas and offer their new ideas and compete with one another, and we'll all grow better, get bigger, and do better. So the problem is we're getting so far away from the founding fathers' concepts, and many of the people that were graduating from school today don't really have a clue with what those were. They get kind of a drive-by view of history instead of really understanding the roots of it and why people were so afraid of government, coming from government that was tyrannical in England and other places. And so the state of Jefferson is trying to get back there. And the problem is, I was just talking to in the jail yesterday about if you don't know who you came from, like if you were adopted out, there's a longing to get back to find out who your people are, and do they look like me, and do they talk like me, and what do they like to do, and what are their skills, and what about their DNA? And if you get far enough away from your roots, generation after generation after generation after generation after generation, you actually don't know anything about your founding and your roots, and you just think, oh, this is America, this is how it always has been. Like if you've been raised in a family like I was, where everybody in the family smoked all day and drank alcohol, it's not unusual for a young child to think that every family in America does the exact same thing. It's just normal. It's just like, oh, all American families are like my family, until you visit another family and see something different. So they're going to have a meeting at Glad Tidings the 29th of this month, July. And you're welcome to dip into that. And there's going to be there's going to be some strong points of view shared. So if you like that, a little debate and differences of opinion, that might be a good meeting for you to sit in on, particularly if you have a big passion about the state of Jefferson. So if you just popped in, again, this is 1410 AM, The Patriot, and we're out here on Mount Huth out in eastern Yuba County. It's one of the poorest counties of the 58, but it has some of the greatest resources. If you're new to this area, this is where the gold rush took place. It may have been the world leader in bringing gold out of a spot. But there's also I was raised here, so there's also some really great resources here. What I love about the area is the mountain range and the farming. And just above here, above Mount Huth, when you get into the Sierra Nevada mountain range, we got some great waterways up there, the Yuba River, the various forks of the Yuba River, and various dams, Bullards Bar Dam, Englebright Reservoir, just some beautiful waterways and places to hang out that don't cost a lot of money. Collins Lake, they're beautiful places to enjoy yourself and camp. So here we are, and we got 3 hours we're going to do today. We are not live today. This isn't a rerun or the best of or the worst of. This is actually a pre-record of fresh material. So people have, I used to have pinch hitters when I left for a while. I'd have somebody come in and speak, and people told me, Lou, we just turned it off. And it's not because the person was a bad person that was speaking. A lot of people just said, Lou, we just get used to you, and it's a habit thing. I think it's a habit thing, right? You listen to talk radio, and the person's gone. They have a visiting speaker. A lot of times you just say, I don't know whether I want to do this or not. So we try to stay consistent. So Leanne was nice enough to come out and hang out with me to pre-record this. I'm going to have to be gone on the 22nd. So I want to talk some today about pensions. How are we doing on time? Okay, So I want to talk about pensions, about government employee pensions, and I want to help educate you. I promise it won't be boring. And the reason I think it won't be boring is because it's going to cost you a lot of your livelihood if you're going to stick around California to fix this. If you want to just walk away from a problem, I'm not blaming you for it. You can just simply move out of California, and you can, in a heartbeat, you can be done with this problem. But if you're going to remain a Californian, or if you're thinking about coming to California, if you're just around here, you think, oh, this is a great state, beautiful state. The weather's great, the terrain, you can go to the ocean, you can go to the mountains, you can ski, you can swim, you can do this, you can do that, you can go to Disneyland, you can just do a lot of cool stuff. But it's becoming more and more expensive. It already is very expensive, highest taxes. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. But I want to talk about pensions. And so, you know, the Bible, I refer to the Bible some because really it is the truth. There's a lot of stuff stated out there. I think we should do it this way. No, I think we should do it that way. No, I think this is the best way. The Bible really teaches principles of how to get by in life, and it talks about when you're working, whatever you do for a living. It says, you know, pay attention to the ant, because the ant works really very hard in the harvest time. But it works hard, and it not only takes care of itself then, but it sets away food for the future. In other words, when we can't work or when things aren't so good. So it says, pay attention in the book of Proverbs to the ant. So here we've come from, you know, back in the 1800s, 4 out of 5 Americans lived on the farm. So they had root cellars, they set aside money, they're no refrigeration, so meat had to be dried and salted. Vegetables either were pickled or put in root cellars, but you pretty much were hand to mouth. And so no freezers, no savings account. You kind of had to stash the money. So as time went on and we became an industrialized nation, and maybe instead of 4 out of 5, maybe 1 out of 20 or 1 out of 100 are on the farm. Things changed, and so there were bank accounts. And then pretty soon, when you got tired of working and you weren't working on the family farm where you had multiple generations that would always stay there, like you had the 1-year-old, and then you had the parents, and then you had the grandparents. You might even have a great-grandparent all living there there. So when the grandparents couldn't plow anymore, couldn't dig anymore, they did other things that were lighter duty. Maybe they cooked some. And so everybody took care of everybody, and you didn't need these big retirement plans and Social Security and stuff like that. So what happened as time went on, people began to put money aside in savings, because everybody knows that at some point you're not going to be able to work any longer. You're just not going to have the physical stamina, or you're not going to want to work anymore, and you just want to enjoy life, travel, hang out, enjoy the people around you, and you need somebody to do that with because you don't have any salary coming in. You got it? So people handle that a number of different ways. Some really forward-thinking corporations offered different types of retirement plans. Generally, those amounted to, before the unions got involved, and you set money aside through these corporations, and then when you retired or you left that corporation, you take that money, and if it gained income, then you ended up with whatever was there. And if it didn't gain much income, whether you lost money or gained money, you ended up with whatever was there. There was no guarantee of what was going to be there. You just set money aside in some sort of an interest-bearing or mutual fund, and that's how you got it. But to go back to California, since that's where we're residing today, from what I've read, the California government, as it grew and it hired more and more employees, they noticed something that was occurring, that their older employees just kept working and collecting pay and didn't decide to not work. And so the leaders of the state thought, listen, we need to have a way of encouraging people to leave and quit work and give the jobs to younger people that may be even more fit, more efficient. Their mind works faster and better. So what they did is, instead of just firing people, they set up a retirement system where they, at a certain age, could continue getting paid, and they would leave and go home, right? It was an encouragement to go home for older people after at whatever point, because I guess they determined some older people couldn't function as well anymore. So some can't, some can, right? So they worked on a pension program, right? So then the unions got involved, and they began, instead of like just getting a certain amount, a small amount of money, the amounts kept increasing. And then they came up with this concept: instead of just getting whatever you saved in some account, you got a defined benefit plan. In other words, they said, listen, if you come to work for the government, we'll guarantee you, say, 1% or 1.5% times the numbers of years you worked. Say if you worked 20 years and you got 1.5%, you would get maybe 30% of your pay for the rest of your life, right? That's what they came up with. It was defined. Instead of just saying, we're going to put this in an account and whatever's there when you get done, that's all you get. They didn't do that. They came up with this, what they call a defined benefit. Now, what a lot of us have that take care of our own retirement, that aren't in any government plan or business plan, is we put money aside in what we call a 401k. There's lots of names for these things, but you put money aside and you hope that it increases in worth through interest and growth of companies. And then at the end, when you start to draw it out, there's more money there than when you started. You got it? But there's no guarantee. But with the government, for some reason, they convinced the legislators to approve a plan that would guarantee, even though remember I said the ant doesn't presume upon the future. In fact, if it presumes that it's going to be difficult, and you better set money aside. And that's all you get is what you got set aside, is the food they set aside. So anyway, the unions prevailed upon the legislators. Why would the unions prevail upon the legislators? They did because they pay for them to be elected. And when legislators are elected, it's addicting. It's kind of like drugs. It's very addicting. So they like the money. They like the power. They like the fact that people consistently call their offices asking them to fix things for them, and knowing that they have the power to do that, and that people have to come to them with their hand out and beg them to help. Please help me, please help me, please help me, please. Pretty soon you have this kind of a fantasy sense of importance, and you get full of yourself. And so pretty soon these legislators don't want to leave, and they just want to stay. And I'll pick this up. We're going to take a break and be right back.
So America doesn't have a worker shortage, it has a work shortage. So says the founder of America's Work, who penned an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal arguing that it's time to take action to get able-bodied Americans off the couch. As many this year as 94.9 million Americans, in fact, are not currently in the workforce. And that doesn't include those who may not want a job, like students and retirees. And almost 128 million people were either unemployed, part-time employed, or just simply not in the labor force. And this number represents nearly 50% of working-aged Americans. Also, a new study from the National Bureau of Economic Research suggests that male 20-year-olds more interested in leveling up the digital world than really grinding it out in the real one. Joining me now to discuss, Tammy Bruce and Tim Phillips. Tim, let's start first with the idea that some are saying, I've said it for a long time, but there's a loud chorus now saying, hey, we're paying people too much money and they won't go to work. We're paying people actually not to work, particularly young, able-bodied men.
Yeah, we've had some states are taking the lead and requiring work for welfare benefits. That's a good idea. The welfare reforms in the late 1990s that Clinton and the Gingrich House did have been watered down aggressively during the Obama years. It is a deeply troubling statistic that you lay out. The workforce participation, the lowest since the Carter years, in the depth of the late 70s. And one of the numbers that's worth pointing out, Charles, millennials, 18 to 34, Bureau of Labor Statistics say that a third of them now live at home.
Yeah,
Gives you a sense.
and Tammy, it's not going to get better, I don't think. I mean, we've seen rampant abuse of all these systems become easier, particularly over the last 8 years when President Obama actually was encouraging people to get on welfare, encouraging people to seek out one of these transfer payment programs and get on there. Many of them got on there and they're staying.
Right, exactly. And when he came into office, one of the things he did was reverse the work requirement effectively, which is just making it easier to just be on welfare. As a matter of fact, when we had that reform, the number of people using it went down by about 60%. It was a huge drop. And under Obama, as a result, though, it ballooned. And so the messaging was, look, this is the new normal. It's either going to be 2 part-time jobs. You're never really going to have a career. This has been for half a generation now. Forget about having a career workplace. It can be very different. And of course, that's depressing. It's not appealing. And then you begin to think, well, maybe this world's not made for what I can do. And maybe you don't even know what you can do. What you've studied poetry. I suppose you got a degree in poetry from college, or women's studies. I mean, we've got an entire generation now that really have not been guided. They've been abandoned by not necessarily the mechanism of government, because we don't like big government, but the messages that come from leadership. And this is something we saw Clinton change it very, very quickly with work for welfare. And of course, George W. Bush continued that with reform, and it worked, and it can work again.
It had immediate dividends.
Yeah.
All right, welcome back. You're listening to Live with Lou, and this is a pre-recorded show, so if you thought of, I'm going to call and ask him something or say something, you can. You'll go to the voicemail, unfortunately, and because we're not actually in the station today. But this isn't a best of show. This is like some fresh material. So if you want to hang on and you don't mind not realizing my heart's beating in this building out here, you were good to go. We were talking about pensions, and in the state of California, we're going broke. And we're going broke city by city, county by county, agency by agency. So there's county, there's state, there's city, there's districts, school districts, water agencies, water districts, all kinds of employees that are now giving money to what we call the California Public Employees Retirement System, or in the case of people working in education, it's California Teachers Retirement System. That would be CalSTRS, California State Teachers Retirement System. So here's what happened. It's very simple. People that run for office, most people, it's a very unusual person, and it's usually a quality person that gets in there and said, you know something, I'm made for something better than this, and I am not going to sit down here and do this and play these games and be dishonest and compromise my ethics and my morals to receive all this money and this power and on these accolades and this euphoria that's built upon ego. I'm not going to do that. But most people succumb to it, become addicted to it, and conform to whatever they need to conform to keep the power, to keep the status, to keep the place, to get reelected. So in order to do that, unions who were allowed, we had what I call the unions in the marketplace, like the plumbers union, pipe fitters union, those unions back in the day, the truckers union, out in the private enterprise marketplace. And then you had government employees that began to argue, or unions began to argue for them, let's unionize government employees. So that was allowed back in the 60s and 70s. And all of a sudden, you had these fantastic amounts of money generated by dues. Like if I don't know how many teachers are in California. Let's say there's 500,000. If you take 500,000 and you multiply that times $1,000, see how much you come up with. That's how much teachers' dues are, like $1,000 or more a year. So when you take that money in the teachers union then becomes one of the most powerful political forces, because what is a powerful political force? It's one that has money and the one that has lots of numbers to generate votes. So that's what's going on. And so basically unions influence politicians by getting them elected, and then they come with their hat in hand wanting the elected officials to provide a contract for your union members that is the best and the brightest, right? And so what happened is that they gave them, first they were giving them 1% or 1.6%, then 1.7%, then 2%, then 2.2%, then 2.3%, and it just kept going up and up and up. And one of the things that became really difficult was in the late 90s and early 2000s, you'll remember the dot-com boom of all the tech stocks that were going nuts. And there was a big housing, the Clintons, under the Clinton administration, they said, hey, we want Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the housing funding organizations behind all these loan operations, we want you to lower your lending guidelines. In other words, you don't have to have a third of the money down or 20% of the money down. In other words, lower them, because we want to push people into house buying. The unfortunate thing is that a lot of those folks couldn't make enough money to buy a house, but they could get a loan because the Clintons said do it. And so there was a fantastic housing boom on top of a dot-com boom. And so what that meant was more and more money was being made by the California Public Employees Retirement System investments. They would take all the pension money that was coming in from the counties and the cities and the state, and then they would invest it. Now, I wanted you to think about all the government agencies, DMV, all those agencies, right? I want you to think of come up with anyone that actually performs well. Who would take their own personal money and ask the government to invest it for them? Is that stupid or what? But that's exactly what the California lawmakers did. And you know who runs the California Public Employee Retirement System? The unions do. And so when they take all that money flowing in millions of dollars a month, and then they pay the pensions, but they invest all the extra money, so hopefully they'll have more money to work with when there are difficult times and not as much money is coming in. So when all this money, this big boom in the economy and the taxes were flowing into the state of California, the union saw all those surplus dollars and said, our union members deserve that money. We want that money. And if you don't give us that money, we're going to vote you out of office. So they put a bill before the Senate that passed, and it was signed by the governor. And it was signed by a governor named Gray Davis. It was called Senate Bill 400, that increased the pension benefits for all levels of public employees based upon the false assumption that the stock market would continue to achieve record levels. If you've been involved in stocks, which I have, mutual funds and stuff, you've watched the stock market go really high. And I remember in 1987, it went really low. So some of those people got increases up to 35%. And particularly law enforcement and got increases up to 3%. Now, when people say that, what's that 3% mean? Well, when you get ready to retire, say you went and become a highway patrolman at 20, and you served 30 years, and say technically you got out at 50. So you take the number of years you served, 30, times the percentage, 3% of your highest salary, plus all the little bells and whistles they add in to spike the salary up. You take 3% of that highest year. 3% times the amount of years you served. 3% times 30 is 90%. And then you take the 90% times the very highest amount they ever earned. So then you go into retirement and you get 90% of your salary that you earned all those 30 years. Now, I want you to think about this. I had a guy call me after a show here recently when I explained this, and I'm going to do it again today because he said, I'd never thought of that. He said, I was a I was a public employee for 11 or 12 years myself. I never thought of it the way you said it. Now here's the problem with that. When you have a defined benefit program where doesn't matter what the investments earn, you're going to promise to pay that highway patrolman 3% times the number of years he served, 3 times 30, that's 90% times the highest pay they ever received in a year. That's a lot of money. And do they need all that money? No, they don't need all that money because they're older. They've raised their kids. They bought their house. They bought their cars. They manage their money right? And so I want you to think of, I brought this up when Carl Adams with the Sutter County District Attorney, when he left office, and I used him as an example. So Carl Adams left office, and actually he served for many, many, many years. He served over 30 years. But you could have actually had 2 retirees, Carl Adams plus one other retiree. And then you have the current serving district attorney of Sutter County, a lady named Amanda Hopper. So let's say you just have Carl Adams retired, so we're paying Carl every month, and he's in his, he's probably 68, 69 years of age. And so say Amanda Hopper serves 20 years, and she retires. And if Carl Adams is still alive, and Amanda's still alive, and then you have a third DA, you could end up paying for 3 district attorneys, but only having the services of 1. Now, I don't know where you think all this money's going to come from, but what's happening is, like in my retirement, since I never worked for a company or for government, any money that I set aside, that's all I have. And how it's going to be spent is totally up to me. And if I misspend it, the consequences are with me. With government, these government employees make this money, whether CalPERS mismanages, steals, and totally causes the entire system to collapse. These public employees expect to be paid what they were guaranteed, 3% times the number of years, 2.7% times the number of years, 2.5% times the number of years, times their salary, and they expect to get that. So let me say, the question might be, why are we going broke? Well, we're going broke for a couple of reasons. One is you can't guarantee people the same salary for the future. It's just impossible because life doesn't stay the same. There's huge downturns. And the second thing is that in these contract negotiations with unions, like I had a union person call the show here a year or two ago, and he was angry, and he said, that's our money, we paid into it. Well, not really. You paid in some of it, and then the public paid in some of it depending on your negotiations. Were you promised that? Yeah, you were promised that. But the fact is, in all these union contracts, the public is picking up some of that payment, and the employees are picking up some. When you're in the private sector, I paid into my savings and my investments. 100% of that money in there is lose investment plus any increase. But with government, it isn't the same. So what happens is the public is contributing every month for their employees that are setting aside money. The public is contributing. Plus, for all those that have retired, the public is paying CalPERS when CalPERS can't afford to pay them. Now, why can't CalPERS pay them? Well, here's the problem. They overpromised, right? It's like saying to somebody when they come to work for you, you overpromise on how much you're going to pay them. And at the end of the month or the pay period, you don't have that much but to pay them. You're actually promised more than you can pay. So the pension system is promised more than they can pay. How did they get there? Well, they based it upon the .com and housing boom of the turn of the century, basically. And so they said, we're making a lot of money on these investments we have. So the public is never going to have to chip in any money. So therefore, this surplus we have because of this fantastic return on investment, let's just give more of that to the employees. They were being very generous with the money, right? But the problem is we've never, since the crash in the early 2000s of the dot-com system and then the housing crash in 2007, we have never, ever got back to double-digit returns at CalPERS. In fact, they're what they call actuarials. That's the prediction model of how much we're spending, how much we're bringing in, how much you're contributing, et cetera, et cetera. They have to earn over 7.5% on all their investments to keep from having counties and cities and agencies contribute more money to their system. But last year they only earned 0.6%. That's less than 1%. That's 0.6%. The year before, I think they earned maybe a little over 2%. So what happens when that occurs is that they go back to the agencies, the cities, the counties, the districts, and they say, sorry, we didn't earn what we thought we were going to earn, and we have a deficit. That means we have a shortage, and we're going to have to ask you to contribute another 5, 10, 20% of this amount to bail us out. And that's what's happening in California. That's what's happening in other states that have the same type of a plan. And so states that are smart are switching to a defined contribution plan. That means what we contribute for the employee is set, but what they end up with is all a crapshoot, as they say. In other words, we're not in control. Maybe you could say God's in control. We're not in control of the future. And bad decisions by politicians can cause the state to begin to collapse. So this is a politician-created crisis. The average taxpayer did nothing to cause this. They did their job. They paid their taxes. They did the proper thing. This is all a 100% politically created crisis, and it has to be solved politically. Now, whether it's solved at the local level or the state level, it seems like the legislator of the state of California, being union-controlled, Democrat-dominated, they don't want to do anything but just take more money from the population to backfill where they screwed up. They do not want to change the CalPERS systems, and they have the power. So what do the cities and counties do? The cities and counties have an option to challenge what's going on with the union-controlled CalPERS and say, we can't afford to do this anymore, so we're going to go to a defined contribution plan, and we're not going to do CalPERS anymore for any new employees. Now, there's a number of ways you can go about changing the retirement system, and the union and CalPERS is not going to go down easy. In other words, when San Diego realized they were hundreds of millions of dollars in debt and couldn't keep paying, they put Proposition B on the ballot down there. Proposition B said, the taxpayers said, we want a different pension system. We cannot afford CalPERS. And they voted it by a high margin, and then immediately the union sued the city of San Diego 2 different times, and it went up to the appellate court, and all the courts kept saying to the union, these people can do this. And so now, for the first time in years, their pension debt is on the way down. They're paying down. So the old people before 2012, when they made this change, they're on CalPERS, but the new people are on defined benefit. So that's one major change that needs to happen. The other change that can happen to help lighten the load is through attrition, like when people die, retire, or just decide they don't want to work for government anymore, is not replace them. Or lay people off and actually replace entire departments with private enterprise subcontractors. When you hire private enterprise, whether they they have sickness in their employees, theft in their employees, they need to fire them, or they fire themselves, they quit, they don't show up for work. It doesn't matter. If you hire private enterprise, all you care about and are worried about is that the project that you hired them to do each day or each month gets done well. If they don't do it well, you can hire brand X, go to the next person, and you can renegotiate whenever you want. So and at the end of the day, when these employees come and go for ABC company that's working for the county, when employees come and go and they say, hey, I'm tired of working, I've worked for 40 years, I'm done, it has no impact on the taxpayers or the budget, because we're not paying any pensions on people that don't work for the county or the city. They just are subcontractors doing a service for the city. I'll give you an example. Recology or Yuba Sutter Disposal, they pick up garbage in our city. Some cities have a municipal company. I mean, they have their own municipal utility that does that, and it's a total waste of money. So when Recology's truck drivers that come by my house on Thursdays and pick up my garbage faithfully, on time, do a good job, when they do that, and then pretty soon, like I've lived long enough and lived in my spot long enough that I've noticed that I've had different truck drivers over the years. They've come and they've gone for whatever reason. But I'm not responsible for that as a taxpayer. That would be Recology's job, is to meet those needs with their employees. And so the taxpayer is off the hook for any workers that serve the public's good that are working for private enterprise. So I notice my street gets swept once a week by a machine, and they have changed personnel as a street sweeper, but it doesn't affect me. I'm not on the hook for some pension plan. So that for the government is going broke. That it's not for a shortage of funds. We're collecting. It's just like Robert Bendorf, the county administrator of Yuba County, said recently. He said our revenues are increasing in Yuba County. However, the cost of doing business is going up even faster. That's a very general statement. You might be thinking, if you're an accountant type or you're a business person, what part of the cost of doing business? Rent, water bill, utilities. What part of business? The cost of paper, the cost of technology. What fantastic cost keeps going up that's causing us to always have our budget in the red, and we're always having to ignore the infrastructure. What is that cost? Telephones, sending people to trainings. What are those costs? Those costs are pensions and health costs, because it's a bad system. In private industry, you do not have that, particularly where you don't have any unions. When people leave your business, if they retire or they quit or whatever they want to do, they take whatever money they set aside that the business has no control over it. That's what they did with their personal money. If they wanted to buy gold, or they wanted to buy stocks or mutual funds, or they wanted to buy a piece of property, totally up to them. They hit the big one and hit a big windfall, or they lose half the money. Totally up to them. The taxpayer is off the hook. What's killing us right now in Yuba City, Marysville, Yuba County, Sutter County, is that we're on this screwy, corrupt, horribly managed, and sometimes managed by criminals who are stealing the money, CalPERS system. Remember, it's California Public Employees Retirement System. So I hope that helps you, but I've written a number of articles in the Territorial Dispatch. You can look them up online. It's very easy. You can read the entire paper, ads and all. It reads like you're just scrolling down the paper, page by page by page, territorialdispatch.biz. And if you want a hard copy, you can actually go pick one up at retail spots. around town where they hand them out free, or you can actually call in and you could purchase a subscription and they'll mail you the copy every week. It's a weekly paper. So I've written a number of articles that discusses why we got into this place. When you look at it, if you add up, this is what Stanford University did. They had this thing called the pension tracker. They added up all the unsecured debt and in the state of California, and it amounts to over almost $107,000 for every household pension debt. So we'll talk a little bit more about this when we come back. Well, we got to take a break.
We're not apologizing for nothing. We're not going to issue a statement for nothing. I will not be lectured by a bigoted, fake feminist, jihad supporting, Sharia supporting, violence calling, female genital mutilation bashing, women threatening, bigoted anti-all women group. I will not be lectured by any one of you fake bigots. And you guys can put up or shut up. I want to see the proof of what was claimed that NRA members are going through cities and inciting violent riots. I demand you denounce all of these things, and if you don't, I may protest you.
All right. Welcome back. Second hour of Live with Lou. This is Lou Benninger here with Leon Lampton, and we're pre-recording this show. You should be listening on July 22nd. If you're not, either you went back in time or we lost track somewhere. But we're talking about pensions, and if you're in California, you pay your taxes in California, a huge amount of your taxes. Once it gets shuffled over to the state or the county or the city, is going to pay for people who no longer are contributing to the community. They're retired. In fact, they may not even live in California anymore. They just took their money and ran. And so I mentioned the other day in an article I wrote for the Territorial Dispatch that if you're a Yuba County resident, as of 2015, when we tallied up all the debt of pension debt, just pension debt, and we all just said, hey, okay, we're going to stop this system, but everybody's going to have to share the debt. It wasn't our fault. Politicians did it, but we're all going to have to share the debt. So we all want you to write a check out there in Yuba County, Oliver, Linda, Wheatland, throughout the county, and we need $14,490 per person, per household. $14,490 in Yuba County. And all those in Yuba City, we need $9,676 per household. Just write that check out and send it over to the city. And in Marysville, we need $9,113. Most of you probably don't have that money laying around, but you're just going to have to find it because we're going to settle up and we're going to get out of debt. Isn't it amazing that the city politicians and the county politicians went out and incurred debt to this amount? You might think, is there a way to run a city or county or state without debt? Just hold that thought. In Sutter, the county of Sutter, each Sutter County household would have to pool their money together and come up with almost $7,500, $7,493. And so that's if we were going to settle up with promises that politicians would not create any more debt. Well, I'll tell you what, and that's almost impossible because politicians continue to make decisions to indebt the population for decades. The city of Marysville indebted, on top of pensions, the city of Marysville, the city council, indebted the 12,000 residents. That's all of them, folks. That's like newborns and 101-year-olds. Indebted us $17 million for a piece of vacant property across on B Street, across from the Ellis Lake, between that and the railroad. In fact, I got a kick out of it. It's supposed to be a big retail commercial development when they started it, when they had the idea, and now they're going to put some housing over there. I want to know how do you like living next to a railroad track? Do you notice those railroad tracks right behind there? And they want to have some really nice condos or something over there. And I thought, well, you know, I could see the convenience of living downtown and everything, but that railroad ought to get your attention. You're going to have to probably get used to that. But back to the pensions, we're in trouble, and what board members and city councils typically do is they take a recommendation from the staff, that would be the city manager, the county administrator, etc., of how to deal with it. And then they vote along with it, and they just instead of like taking responsibility for the city or county, they just kind of say, hey, Robert's got it. Hey, Scott Mitnick's got it over there. Hey, Steve Krager, he's got it over there in Yuba City, or Walter Munchheimer's got it in Marysville. We don't have to worry about it as a board or city council. Honestly, it's fascinating to me the amazing statements that politicians make when they want you to vote for them, and they don't have any substance to those statements. Oh, yeah, I'm going to make this change. I'm going to stop these pensions. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to cut pay. I'm going to do this. Now, it's true that you got to have 3 votes altogether. But the fact is, if you never hear these people argue these causes, you wonder whether it's just all blowing smoke. But the fact is that recently, here's the problem. All these administrators, they have some skin in the game to keep things the way they are right now. When you're making like Robert Bendorf, he's making about $250,000 a year. Walter Munchheimer, was he making about $130,000 a year plus benefits? Scott Mitnick's making $230,000 in benefits. What incentive is it for them to change the system? You know, the fascinating thing is that here as citizens, we're supposed to be in a country where citizens are running the country, and that the public servants serve at our pleasure. But it's just got flip-flop. It's just the opposite of that. And so now the citizens are the servants of the aristocrats. And so the citizens don't choose the rates of pay for anybody. Did you know that the supervisors, 5 people called supervisors, men and women, they can get up one day and decide and say, hey, let's review our salaries. And they could tell the county administrator to put it on the agenda for the next meeting, and they can go in and they can vote themselves any kind of increase they want. And all they need is 3 of the 5 people to agree, and it's going to happen. You say, well, what about the voters who have to pay for that? You don't get a say. Your say would be to eliminate them if they pissed you off enough. But you have no say on the amount they get paid. You get no say on any of the salaries of any of the people in the county. Isn't that amazing? Now, recently, I understand a resident of Sutter County, Liz Cervantes, has filed paperwork to begin circulating a petition to put on the ballot whether or not the county of Sutter should change to be a charter county. And that's been tried once before, and it was voted down. It got on the ballot. Ron Suthard helped put it on the ballot. What that would do is you would vote in 15 commissioners. You would vote for it, and then if you voted for it, you would vote for one of these or several of these commissioners. And they would vote, and they would collect 15 commissioners who then would write a constitution for the county of Sutter. This could happen in a city or a county, because there are charter cities and charter counties in the state, and they run differently. So that would mean, like in Placer County, I was told that they switched to a charter county, and the residents felt that the supervisors were being way paid too much. And they wanted to use that money for other stuff than pay supervisors, so they cut their pay by 30%. Now that's the power of the citizens in a charter county. In the type of county we have, the county government in Sutter, Yuba, these 5 supervisors, when they negotiate with the unions, there is no taxpayer that is at the bargaining table. The ones who actually are going to pay the bill, the taxpayer, do not have a say. Wouldn't it be something if the taxpayers had to ratify the vote? In other words, they could make an agreement, the administrators and union could make an agreement on salaries, but then the county residents or the city residents would have to ratify that vote in order for it to happen. So that's the challenge that you have, and that's why right now the city of San Francisco is in deep trouble. San Bernardino County and Vallejo, San Bernardino City and Vallejo and Stockton all have dealt with bankruptcy issues themselves, all due to pensions. But none of them have really attacked the pension situation. San Diego seems to be the only city that I know of in California, although it's the 8th largest city in the country, and it is one of the premier cities of California in terms of beauty and tourist travel and all that kind of stuff. But they just basically negotiated with the unions and negotiated themselves into a bankrupt situation and given away the entire city coffers. Now, when you look around Yuba City, Marysville, Sutter, and Yuba County, and you wonder why certain things aren't being kept up in certain areas, particularly over in Yuba County and Marysville, it's because that the money that would have gone to those roads, gone to those parks, improved those drainage systems, etc., put in new lights, all that money is being siphoned off to pay for people that aren't working anymore and to pay for their health and pension benefits, because there's not enough reserves in the pension fund to pay them. The money's gone. Now, in some cases, it's been stolen. And a guy named Villalobos, who recently ended his own life after he was discovered, got payoffs and got $50 million, made $50 million off paying off the CalPERS people, giving them spiffs to run all the investments of nearly $1 trillion through him. And he made over $50 million in investment fees. But when he was found out and going to be prosecuted, as the head of CalPERS was prosecuted, instead of going to jail, he killed himself. So what we have is criminals, corruption, and a really bad system, and it needs to change. So enough on that. Pretty sad situation. I wanted to make some comments this morning about the incredible hypocrisy of Democrats in never holding Obama accountable for anything, and yet we've only had this Trump administration for 7 months. I don't care what your politics are. Mine is conservative. I don't really identify with the Republicans anymore, because I think they don't really stand for anything anymore, and there are just as many liars and hypocrites over there as there is on the other side. So the fascinating thing is this Trump administration, who has been embattled by the Democrats, because they don't care on the Democrat liberal side whether or not Trump was elected or not. In other words, have you ever heard the term, if somebody wants to say, hey, I'll flip you for whoever's buying the dinner? And you'll say, okay, flip a coin. You say, okay, heads I win, tails you lose. If you think about it, you lose both ways, right? So the Democrats are fine with a competitive system of parties as long as they win. If they don't win, they will destroy the government. That's what's going on here right now. They have, whether it's rioting in the streets, whether it's assassination, whether it's blocking hundreds of appointees to office. It's interesting to me on the CNN and these talk shows, they ask Trump government representatives, well, how come you're not filling all these spots? And they know darn well why they're not filling the spots in the government. It's because that the approval process has been corrupted and bogged down, and there's hundreds of people that are waiting to be vetted and to be appointed to office. And so the government is being hampered by the Democrats. Nobody else. You think anybody complaining about that? Republicans not throwing a stink? It's just like the Republicans are in on it. They're against Trump. You know why they're against Trump? The same reason the Democrats are. Because they have a way about them in Washington, D.C. and around the country, and it isn't in public service. It's in self-service. And it's in preserving the corruption of the incestuous relationship between lobbyists, special interests, unions, and politicians. And the people get routinely screwed, and then they go home and tell them what a wonderful job they're doing for them. And they're lying. So what the liberals are doing is you know how many investigations we've already had? We got this Mueller from ex-FBI guy now is in, we've had 7 months of investigations and accusations and commissions reviewing the Russian-U.S. connection. Do you find it interesting that no one said anything about Russia for 50 years, the last 50 years until Trump was inaugurated? No one said anything about Russia when Hillary Clinton actually took money from Russia for the Clinton Foundation and then arranged for Russia to export or purchase 20% of the known uranium reserves in the U.S. That never got anybody's attention. I thought it was interesting when nobody said anything about Obama using drone strikes to execute Americans abroad. I think that's good to kill Al-Qaeda, and probably these people were sympathizers, but I thought, man, we're letting people out of Gitmo, and he's like sending drone strikes. Nobody really complained about that. No one said anything about Hillary's campaign manager's brother. That would be John Podesta's brother, who was paid $175,000 to lift sanctions against Russia. Isn't that interesting? You think, and nobody talked about John Podesta's relationships and business dealings with Russia at all. And yet they're worried about the Trump empire's connections to them. Nobody really threw a fit about Obama engaging in military intervention around the world without getting the permission of Congress. Nobody really complained about Obama, his expanding presidential power through the use of executive orders. Remember that? Just like, oh, we don't need the Congress to decide whether to expand the power of the EPA. I'm just telling them to expand it. And we're going to now control all your water. If you have a pond in the back of your house, we now are going to tell you how high and low and what you can plant around it and everything about we're going to control, and we're the czars of the waterways. Nobody said anything about that. Nobody said anything when Obama filled the White House with lobbyists after he said he was not going to do no such thing. Nobody said anything when Obama gave 47 of his fundraisers, people that what they call bundlers, not bunglers, but bundlers. They bundle money and then give it to the Obama campaign. Obama, his administration gave 47 of those bundlers administration jobs. He also gave $500 million to Solyndra, who was managed and run by one of Obama's biggest bundlers. It was basically a payback for raising all the money for him. And then Solyndra closed the stores and kept the money, $500 million. Nobody's really complained about Obama allowing for the murders and rapes at the hands of illegal immigrants. It's fascinating, the whole illegal immigrant things, because I just don't understand what people think. I'm leaving for Vietnam pretty soon, and I have my visa ready. Can't get in the country without a visa. They'll just tell you, sorry, just turn around and get on the next plane out of here. When you just can't make it through immigration. And if you sneak in across some border, say from Cambodia, and you're in there without a visa, and they ask for your visa, they'll just lock you up. That's the way that works. But it's interesting how people just don't give a rip about people coming into the country and committing all kinds of crazy crimes. You know, it's fascinating. No one said much about Hillary's net worth going up over $100 million when she was Secretary of State. Where did that money come from? It came from foreign governments. It went into the Clinton Foundation. You'd think, you know, all you little nonprofits out there that tried to form your little nonprofit, your little Tea Party operations and your voter registration groups like True the Vote, all these little groups got such a hassle, and it got investigated and vetted and harassed, multiple investigations, filled out hundreds of pages of questions and answers. And then Clinton Foundation gets no investigation at all. So, are we ready to break? Okay. So, I want to cover a few of these things. A lot of times we'll get away from the Obama administration and you forget that every day, you remember all the things, all the crisis that he never even heard about until he read the newspaper? Was that hilarious or what? He'd go into the meetings, the briefings, and he'll say, you know, the first thing I heard about that IRS crisis was I read it in the New York Times. I thought, honestly, man, where's it? That guy's back smoking dope and having sex with some guys. I'll be right back. We got another half the show to go, hour and a half.
Cosmopolitan magazine recently published an article with a headline that reads, 7 women who could be our first female president. Among those 7, of course, is not a single conservative or Republican-leaning lady. Instead, Cosmopolitan lists a handful of progressive women who they believe are eminently qualified for the job. But in reality, there's no shortage of right-leaning women also eminently qualified to be President of the United States. We have UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, Utah Congresswoman Mia Love, former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, Iowa Senator Joni Ernst, and New Mexico Governor Susana Martinez. Instead of acknowledging these women's many accomplishments, the Young Women's Network of Hearst Digital Media, owners of Cosmopolitan magazine, would rather pretend that right-leaning women don't exist. In fact, it's only the latest assault against Republican and conservative women originating, ironically, inside a women's magazine. Recently, Elle magazine published an article titled, How Do We Criticize Problematic Women?, referring to right-leaning ladies like Megyn Kelly, Kellyanne Conway, and Ivanka Trump. Not to be confused with feminist icons who overcame stereotypes and sexism to land successful careers, Elle magazine views right-leaning women as problems who need to be fixed. But being problematic isn't so bad. Instead of embracing a culture that's anti-male and obsessed with victimhood, problematic women tend to favor a more traditional approach to women's empowerment, one in which they embrace biology and consider themselves a product of my choices rather than a victim of my circumstances. As someone who self-identifies as a problematic woman, I have a message for these women's magazines who can't help but discriminate against their own kind. Calling us problematic isn't insulting. We'll embrace this new name with pride. Being a problem, after all, is how this whole feminism thing all got started. But pretending that we don't exist, that is insulting, and we're here to very proudly tell you otherwise.
All right. Well, you're listening to The Patriot, KMYC 1410 AM, and you're listening to Live with Lou if you just tuned in. And Leon Lampton and I are sitting here, and we're talking about the last 15 minutes or so. We've been talking about the duplicity or the hypocrisy where Barack Obama, who lied all his way into the White House, to me, I'd say the same thing if he's a Republican or whatever he was. In fact, we never even have figured out where he was born, where he graduated from college, anything about his life. I don't even know whether he ever had a real job or not. But the liberals, that doesn't make any difference whether he was properly vetted. A Republican will not only be vetted, but even after they're elected, they will be investigated continually until they figure out a way to impeach them or throw them out of office. So I've been going over for the last couple of minutes some of the hypocrisies where the media or Democrats or liberals never question anything about what Obama did. So one of the areas is black people took a dive under Obama. You'd think, oh, first really black president, at least he's half black. But you'd think that blacks he would have been concerned about the schooling of blacks, the training of blacks, the IQ of blacks, discrimination of blacks. And he would think he would be concerned about jobs in the inner city and businesses remaining in the inner city and lightening regulations to allow businesses to thrive in the inner city. But he didn't. He did just the opposite. He drove people out of the inner city. He shut down the coal industry, shut down utility industries, all kinds of industries that he didn't like. And he shut down school choice programs that were benefiting primarily black, poor folks. One of them was right away in the District of Columbia, which is not a state and is kind of run by the government there in Washington, D.C. And they had a wonderful charter school program for black children. Anybody could be involved, but it's a high population black area. And it was a wonderful program where kids were thriving in an alternative schools, but the unions, who have Obama by the short hairs, told him that we don't want that program. So he fought, even though his kids and the Clintons before him went to private schools, highly expensive private schools. They had all the benefits of private education, and although I don't think it's over 50%, but it's a high percentage of teachers in the public school system actually have their kids in private schools. So he fought school choice, which the biggest beneficiaries of school choice or charter schools are black young people. So I want to play you a clip by Prager University that's titled "School Choice Saved My Life."
Public schools aren't the answer for everyone. They weren't the answer for me. Schools in my neighborhood in Jacksonville, Florida, functioned less as places of learning and more as warehouses to keep kids off the street. I know. I was one of those kids. I don't blame teachers or parents. I'm not interested in blaming anybody. I'm only interested in making things better. And the only way to do that is to give parents and students a choice. If a student can't get the education they need at their public school, there has to be an alternative. Thankfully, there was for me. My early years in my Jacksonville school were not a success, to put it mildly. I seldom understood the lesson. I was often confused and frustrated. I asked my teachers questions, but it seemed to me that this just annoyed them. So I stopped asking questions, and I withdrew into myself. I failed third grade twice. Fourth and fifth weren't much better. I lashed out by getting into fights with my classmates. D's and F's filled my report card. I was going nowhere. I was just another black kid in the warehouse. But fortunately for me, my life changed the summer before 6th grade. I went to live with my godmother. She had one overriding thought: to get me into a better school. A good education, she knew, was the only way to get out of the hole I had dug myself into. She didn't have any more money than my family did, but she had a plan. That was worth a lot. She knew about another school, a private school. Using a tax credit scholarship, you can call it a voucher, she enrolled me at Esprit de Corps Center for Learning. Esprit demands excellence from its students. It teaches them to be warriors for knowledge and for good values. The teachers at Esprit were invested in my success. They took the time to figure out why learning was so difficult for me, and they tailored their instruction to my learning style. Sound elite? It is. Sound expensive? It's not. In fact, Esprit spends less money per student than the public school I had attended. Instead of dreading my classes, I began to look forward to them. Instead of fistfights, I began doing community service work. I even earned the National Police Athletic League's Girl of the Year award in 2009. When it was time for me to apply to college, Esprit even helped me to research scholarships and apply for waivers so that I could take my college entrance test for free. On June 5th, 2010, I graduated from Esprit de Corps with honors, becoming the first member of my immediate family to earn a high school diploma, and eventually the first to earn a college degree, and then a master's. Without school choice, none of this would have been possible. Why is it so hard to grasp? Why are so many people so resistant to children and parents having a choice of schools? The system, especially for economically disadvantaged kids, is broken. I've seen it up close, and I've seen what happens when it works better when there is choice. School choice allows parents who live in undervalued neighborhoods to pick the school that best works for their children. Of course, the opponents of school choice, the politicians, and the teachers' unions who profit off of keeping poor black kids trapped in the warehouse, say it takes money away from students who need it the most. But does anybody believe that money is the problem? Washington, D.C., for example, spends over $20,000 per student. We don't need any more money. We need more choice. Let's challenge public schools to compete on quality. Only competition breeds excellence. Prosperous parents can choose where to send their kids to school, public, private, or charter, wherever they have the best chance to succeed. Why shouldn't all parents have that choice? We have the money to make it happen. We just need the will. None of us deserve to be imprisoned by our zip codes. Education is the only way out of generational poverty. I'm a living example. Let's help redefine public education to make it work for everybody. There's only one way to do that: school choice. What are we waiting for? I'm Denisha Merriweather for Prager University.
All right. When I listen to her and I see all the difficulties that the union is creating for Betsy DeVos, who is the new Secretary of Education and is a school choice advocate, and I don't know, I think I've read, gosh, maybe I'm exaggerating. It seemed like I said there's 18 lawsuits filed against her throughout the various states, fighting her moves to reform the system. I thought if I was president, maybe I would just say, let's just shut down the Department of Education. You know, we never even had one until President Carter came into power. President Reagan tried to shut it down, but didn't have the beef to do it. But I just thought, you know, education in this country was much better when parents did the educating with the assistance of some professionals. But when parents just stand back and go to work and feed the kids at home occasionally, even the schools will feed them at home, when the parents have stepped out of the deals, things have slidden and they've gotten very bad, and particularly bad in poorer communities where a lot of blacks reside. And so I'm thrilled that this young lady not only made it out of elementary school and into high school because she kept failing third and fourth grade, but she got her high school diploma and went to college and now has a master's degree. She still doesn't sound like she's that old to me. But the fact is that politicians often don't do what's good for the people. They do what's good for themselves. They do what's good for the people that put them in office, which are big funders and unions. And so I want to mention a few more things. There's far more things here about Obama that no one complained about. And I just want to if you're I don't know that we even have many liberals listen to this, and that's fine with me. I really didn't create this program to speak to liberals. I want you to think what would happen if Trump would have done these things. For instance, remember when Obama wiretapped and surveilled reporters such as James Rosen of the Associated Press? What if, do you remember anybody complaining that Obama's net worth rose over $10 million while president? How'd that happen? Bill Clinton met with Loretta Lynch on the airport tarmac right when his wife was being examined and maybe going to be prosecuted. And Loretta Lynch, who's the chief prosecutor of the United States, and Bill Clinton, her husband, no one really complained about that, right? You remember when Donna Brazile fed Hillary the debate questions when she debated Trump? Nobody really complained about that. This just still blows my mind that Obama and Hillary and Susan Rice all lied repeatedly over months that the whole Benghazi attack occurred because of a funky video. And if it wasn't even a whole video, it was the intro to a video. And Susan Rice lied about that on 5 separate shows, I believe, in one weekend. Liberals didn't say anything about Obama's lowest learner, who everybody said, oh, well, we don't know why they would have done that. A couple of rogue agents, right? But emails have been revealing that it was a planned hit on anybody that could hurt Obama's chances of re-election. And they abused the rights of taxpayers. They said nothing when Eric Holder sold the guns. You remember, these are the guys that want to take your guns. Eric Holder sold guns to criminals in Mexico. Remember Fast and Furious? Some of those guns were used to kill American law enforcement. Remember, you didn't say anything remember back when the Clintons stole all that property when they left the White House? Nobody really said much. We just laugh off. It's amazing. These people are criminals. If we did this when locally, when Amanda Hopper or Pat McGrath, the respective district attorneys for Southern Yuba County, if people don't feel like they're prosecuting a case just perfect, even though very few people in the communities are attorneys, if they don't do it just perfect or aggressively or fast enough, oh my God, it's just people are freaking out. But the Clintons can steal property. Do you ever hear that tape where Hillary Clinton's laughing off getting a child rapist off a case, off prosecuting, she was a defense attorney. She just laughs about this young girl being raped. Democrats don't say much about that. I don't remember Democrats saying much about Janet Reno under Bill Clinton using a tank to kill. Remember the Branch Davidians down in Waco, Texas? And the whole place burned all the people up in it. Pretty gnarly, huh? Well, I could go on and on. There's just 30, 40, 50, 60 incidences. How about this? Obama firing the inspector general after investigating an $850,000 AmeriCorps grant received by a nonprofit run by a former NBA star and Obama supporter, Kevin Johnson. Remember that? You forgot that. Well, there's some improper stuff there that he just kicked his little Obama $850,000. You remember those 36 executive staff office workers in the White House that didn't pay their taxes? Remember that deal? I remember that. They owed almost $1 million in taxes. They just thought, oh, we don't need to pay taxes. We work at the White House. Didn't say anything when Obama released Guantanamo detainees, and a lot of them, majority of them, went back to kill other Americans. You know, it's just amazing the hypocrisy. It'd be good if we had the same judgment, judge all candidates, all political employees. Same logic. But there's this hypocrisy, and what we've seen now we've actually put a label on it. We call it fake news. It's just, I used to joke when this first started years ago, we started this show, and I just remembered growing up in the days of communism, 1950s and 60s. And, we had 3, 4, 5, 6 news outlets here at that time, but in the USSR, as they called it, the Soviet Socialist Republic, they had one news outlet called Pravda, Pravda, Pravda. And Pravda was the government's mouthpiece, but it was their media, television, newspaper. And Pravda would just put out some just god-awful lies and baloney. Like, for instance, some dictator like Khrushchev, Nikita Khrushchev, who was the principal or president, they all went and voted, but he got 99% of the vote. Stuff would happen like that was just stupid. So, anyway, it's a sad situation where people are so fanatic about having it their way that they will lie, cheat, and steal and assassinate and cut people's heads off or talk about it to get their way. Pretty interesting situation. Let's see. Did you know, you've heard about how we doing on time? Yeah, I know, I'm going to go. So, Kate Steinle, you remember Kate Steinle? She was murdered, and I'm going to see if I can find it here for you, and I want to tell you a little bit about it because the guy that killed her is going to trial, and he was deported by the United States Customs and Immigration people. He was deported 5 different times, and he's been assigned an attorney. Isn't this great? We're paying for an attorney. His name's Matt Gonzalez. And so Mr. I'm looking for the guy's last name. He has a long last name, and I don't see it here written. But the culprit who shot Kate Steinle, he had stolen that gun. He was released by San Francisco police because he had been just got out of federal prison and they had a warrant for him, but they dropped the warrant since it involved marijuana. So they let him out on the streets. Instead of holding him, ICE had requested, ICE is Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they had requested they hold him because they wanted to deport him, but they let him go, and so he went out and stole a Sig Sauer brand gun, and he ended up murdering Kate Steinle. The fellow's name was multiple felon, deported 5 times, Juan Francisco Lopez Sanchez. So he's accused of killing Kate Steinle on July 1, 2015. So the attorney, his argument, I just want you to think this through, is that the gun went off accidentally because these Sig Sauers have a problem and they go off sometimes. It's not user error, it's gun error. It's just baloney. It's just total baloney. Gonzalez complained about the decocking lever as well, claiming it is not clearly marked. I guess it should have been in multiple languages. But anyway, he talked about the mechanism when you draw it from the holster that if it's set a certain way, the device can go off. I just find this incredibly amazing. Now, there's a new case where an illegal alien with that had been deported 7 times. This is a new one. He drank about 12 beers before driving. He was driving 100 miles an hour with people in the car. And when he ran off the road, he killed one of the folks in his own vehicle who was a legal immigrant. He killed a father of 3. This fellow had been deported. His name is Nemias Garcia Velasco, 32, was charged with motor vehicle homicide. Told officers he had 12 beers before getting behind the wheel. Prosecutors said he was going over 100 miles per hour when he lost control of the van, and he killed Silvano Torres, 58, who was riding in the cargo area of the van without a seatbelt. And prosecutors said Garcia Velasco had been removed from the U.S. a total of 7 times. Now, I am happy that Donald Trump got elected. I'm not happy about everything that's going on in Washington. I'm not happy that there's not a wall being built. I'm not happy that Obamacare has not been repealed. I'm not happy that Republicans are as spineless and castrated as they act. I'm not happy about that they really are just the same parties across the aisle with different lapel pin. And Garcia Velasco had been removed from the U.S. 7 times. You have to ask yourself, what are we doing? What are we doing? You know, I've traveled in both a lot of third world countries, Africa, Asia, Indonesia, Philippines, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and also third world country. I still call Mexico that. And I have never traveled in a country as violent and unruly and unlawful as Mexico. I've been stopped on a school bus with a load of adults and kids doing humanitarian work down the Baja Peninsula. Stopped by people in plain clothes with Uzis. They climbed on the bus, tried to take our money, and asked us if we had any guns. I've been stopped by what looked like federales, where we're just driving down the road, pulled over for no reason, not violating a speed limit, not violating any law, and simply what they wanted was us to pay them off. Mexico is rated as one of the most violent countries in the world. I think only one more violent is Syria. So when you have people that are breaking into this country, a lot of them are criminal types. And when I say that, I'm not even saying this guy is a criminal type, as except for the fact that he's a drunk. He's an alcoholic. And it's fascinating. I have a class that I do it in, I facilitate it and teach it sometimes in B-Pod in Yuba County. And I asked the other day, we were talking about how to manage your money, and I said, oh, by the way, I said, I just realized how much DUIs cost. And I said, any of you guys had a DUI? And over half the room was Hispanic, and over half the room raised their hands that they'd had one. You know, there's a problem with this demographic coming into the country, and that's their inability to manage themselves, behave themselves, manage, it's called self-control, anger management. And if you're going to drink, don't drive, or hire somebody to help you. We're going to be right back, and we'll got another segment to do. Welcome back. We're into our last hour, and we thank you for listening. This is the Patriot, 1410 a.m. out here at Mount Huth in East Linda. We're talking about illegal immigrants, illegal aliens. We use euphemisms now because people want to think, well, they're just undocumented workers. Everybody coming to the border, they're just work. Certainly a lot of them are. But we also have, the reason we have vetting, what we have is 8 years of a president that wasn't ever vetted. We didn't ever look into his background. So now we don't want to look into anybody else's background, and we want to put them in our schools and let them rape our kids, drive without, I don't know. I wish I had $1 for every accident I learned about where the person was undocumented and didn't have any insurance. In fact, I asked my my insurance agent one day, Maggie Capitano, because I got in a car accident and then I had a red light camera ticket and my rates went up, and I said, man, those rates are getting pretty high. She said, well, you had this, you had that. And I said, well, why don't you give me some of that illegal alien insurance? So, in other words, the really cheap stuff, or the stuff that doesn't cost you anything. I want you to just, I get a kick out of it. We can't just be normal anymore. This politically correct junk goes around. It makes me sick to my stomach. So I look at the drunk driving arrests, and I'm not saying these people are illegal, but the number of Mexican surnames is amazing. The majority of them are, right? Now, please don't go down the Mexican racist deal, please. I spend days each week, 2 days a week, working with lots of illegals in the Yuba County Jail, and they actually like me and like what I have to say. So before you go off all hot and bothered, why don't you just go out and stretch your stuff a bit out there, right, before you come and talk to me about it. I don't want to hear your phone calls over here. So the problem is that when you have people coming into this country, like for instance, Cuba under Fidel Castro was thrilled to get rid of Cuban perverts, and they put them on boats and sent them to the U.S. Did you realize that? If you didn't, it's okay. I got it. You can look it up if you want. But they released all kinds of prisoners and allowed them to freely get on boats and take the 90-mile hike and be received with open arms at stupid people in the United States. The same thing is happening in Mexico. Mexico is thrilled. Those presidents get up every morning thinking one of their governors or one of their mayors is going to be assassinated by these nutcases in Mexico, these cartel people and all the rest of them, and their heads are going to be cut off. You think this head cutting off thing was new with ISIS? Come on. It's been happening in Mexico for a long time. I had a guy doing my drug dealing days where he was down in Mexico, and they were bringing drugs across the border, and he got sideways with some boys, and they chained him to a bed, a steel bed frame, and they held him hostage until some folks rallied up some money and got it down there to pay his freedom. That's just the way business is done down there. I'm not saying, oh, I'd never visit there. I like Mexico myself. And we just finished another building project down here a few months ago. I'm just saying it's different. So when you go around the world, like I'm going to be in Vietnam, it's different. Its culture's different. They have different ways about them. They're not all bad. Some of their ways are better than what we have here in America. I'm not being an egotist about it or culturally judging them. Every culture has some interesting aspects. You think, oh, maybe we should pay more attention to that if we were in America. But there's also some gnarly things that go on in these other cultures that we don't do in America. We've moved on past those days. Like very few people get their heads chopped off in America. That's a good thing, don't you think? And until recently, women's vaginas were pretty much left untouched from people wanting to saw on them with knives and razor blades. That would be a new thing, and that would be some of Obama's favorites coming into the country. Forbidding lady, you know, we spent all these years, I get a kick out of it because they're always like hacking on America. Oh, women couldn't vote. Women couldn't do this. Women couldn't do that. And now with Sharia law, women can't do a lot of things. But the liberals don't seem to have a problem with that. It's just kind of interesting. So Nehemias Garcia Velasco, 32, he thought 100 miles an hour was good enough for that freeway. 2001 Dodge Ram work van. And he killed one of his fellow workers, Silvano Torres, who had 3 children. It was on I-80 in Omaha area after drinking a dozen beers. I was at the gym last night late down at the training zone in Marysville, and I like the training zone because I'm in the minority there. It's a lot of fun. I'm a minority color-wise and age-wise, by a long ways age-wise. So most of the people that go there, Mexican and Indian and Asian. Honestly, the whites are by far in the minority, and I meet some really cool people. So one guy, he's learning English, and he's trying to teach me Spanish, and he was working in one of the local restaurants. Great guy, in great shape, very nice guy, and then he got a better job, plumbing, and he's becoming a plumber, and he's getting it on. He's working both jobs. So he came to me last night, and he says, we were talking about working out, and he says, oh, you should drink a beer or two before you work out. I didn't even try to explain to him I hadn't had a beer in 40-some years, except for one when I was trying to get off Norcos. I said, man, if I would be so goofed up after drinking a couple of beers, I wouldn't be interested in working out. I'd just slump down in the chair watching some TV deal. So anyway, he was telling me about drinking beer, and I kept thinking, I said, I wonder how much beer you drink, dude, because are you one of these Mexican dudes that can't control the cerveza? So anyway, we got a problem in this country with immigration, and one of the parts of it is that I want to play a clip for you here about health care, is that in California, we live in a socialist Republic of California, and where all illegal aliens are welcome. If you can get here, you can stay here. No problem. Sanctuary city, sanctuary state, and you can have free health care, free education, free food, free Section 8 housing, and get it on. So the question you might have is, how come the health care thing is so confusing? Like, how come we can't go down and buy insurance for health care like we do a car? Like, if I want just the basic insurance to cover the other guy and if my car gets smashed, let it go, it's all right. Why can't I get that for my health, just like I get it for my car, right? Get catastrophic insurance and just buy it from anybody else I want. I could buy it from people in Florida. I could buy it from an agent in California. I could just buy it. Why is it so complicated? And why is healthcare so expensive? I got an MRI in Vietnam a year ago, a year and a half ago for $130 MRI on my shoulder. People, when I brought the MRI back, they said, Lou, it's top quality, and they just laughed when I told them the price. So let's listen to this clip.
Healthcare costs are skyrocketing. Since the Affordable Care Act passed in 2010, healthcare costs have gone up by double digits each year. The healthcare bill did get more people insured and helped with issues like pre-existing conditions. But the problem with the healthcare law isn't what it tried to do. It's what it failed to do. Reduce costs. The solution to the cost problem is with the free market and competition. Here are just 3 ideas that could make a huge difference. Number 1, we can roll back the tax burden on insurance companies. The ACA added a $60 billion tax on health insurers, which made them have to charge more to consumers to cover their costs. Taxes roll downhill, so a tax on insurers means higher costs for all of us. Number 2, we can lower the regulations on health plans. The ACA has a lot of requirements that force insurance plans to cover an incredibly big list of benefits. If you want a bare bones insurance plan that simply covers catastrophic events like a car accident or cancer, you currently can't get one. By boosting the benefits of every plan, it restricts competition and drives up prices by forcing smaller health insurers out of the marketplace. Low-cost catastrophic plans that are normally purchased by younger, healthier people are no longer available because of the ACA requirements. Introducing as many health insurers to the marketplace as possible can drive down prices by encouraging businesses to compete to cut costs. The ACA did the exact opposite: less competition and higher prices. Number 3, encourage medical innovation. The cost to bring a new drug to market already exceeds $2.5 billion, and the ACA places an additional $22 billion tax burden on innovator drug companies, the same businesses that produce life-saving medications and cures for those in need. Punishing drug producers forces them to charge even higher prices to make up for the lost money in research, development, and taxes. If we encourage, not punish drug makers, it will lead to more breakthroughs and lower costs, a win-win for all of us. As healthcare costs skyrocket, don't forget that the free market is our best chance to rein them in.
We're back. I was just thinking, if I have a cucumber in my refrigerator, and when I went to the store, they had cucumbers in a stack. I think it was a couple for $1 or something like that. But if I didn't want to buy them that way, I could have bought them in a deli tray, all chopped up. If I didn't want to go to the problem of washing them and chopping them, I could have bought them in a deli tray, right? Or I could have bought them in a little jar. They call them pickles. I could have got them that way, right? I could have done a number of things. And it seems like when it comes to health insurance, we've lost our ever-living minds, does it not? Now, why would I have to? I'm a single guy. Why would I have to buy insurance for pregnancy, for abortion, for all kinds of things, sex change operations? Why couldn't I get a simple, what if I wanted to pay all my own bills? Just a simple catastrophic deal to just cover the big stuff, right? Why couldn't I do that? And why couldn't there be insurance companies that specialize in pre-existing conditions? That says we will take you no matter what your condition is, and we will adjust the fee. Just like my car policy says, they give all kinds of discounts. Like if I'm a nice guy, they give me 10% off. And if I don't smoke, if I don't drink, if I don't do this, that, and the other thing, they give me these little spiffs to live right, right? It's the same thing with, could be the same thing with your health insurance, If you weigh 1,000 pounds, maybe you're going to have to pay more on health insurance. But the thing is, isn't this stupid where they had health insurance where you couldn't buy it from anybody in the country? You had to buy it from somebody in your own state. So when this guy talks about being over-regulated, it's over-regulated. When it takes billions of dollars to get FDA approval, that's crazy. You can go buy drugs I went and bought some, what do they call that, a Z-Pack for antibiotics for infection. It costs a lot to go to the doctor here, so I thought, I got this figured out. I know what a sinus infection is, so I just stopped in at a pharmacy in Vietnam. You don't have to have a prescription in Vietnam to buy pharmaceutical drugs. I just bought myself some Z-Packs. They cost about $2 a piece. I went down to get an MRI that probably would cost $1,000 or $1,500 here. I paid $130 for it and was treated really well and got in right away. Very professional in a hospital in District 7 of Saigon. You can get people fly down to Mexico to get their teeth worked on because they save third to half the money. Get their whole teeth worked over. There's something wrong here, and the government is the problem. When I had a dentist who's now retired, great guy, did great work, was a great friend, helped me with emergencies when I'd knock my tooth, break a tooth playing basketball at juvenile hall, would meet me there at night to deaden the area till he could fix it the next day. And he wanted to do a little cosmetic work on my teeth, and they were looking a little ragged. So I said, no problem. How much are going to cost? Because I didn't have health insurance and I didn't have dental insurance. And so he said it's going to cost $1,000. So I got home, I got thinking about it. I thought, man, that's a lot of money. I think I'm going to go do that overseas or out of the country. So I talked to my friend Janie Vasquez down in San Diego, and I said, hey, is there a good dentist that you use down in Tijuana? Could you help me connect, and I'll go down there and have this work done? She said, no problem. In fact, I'll like drive you down. I'll take you down. And so I told the dentist that I was I couldn't really afford it, and I will check on doing it when I'm on the road. Within 15 minutes, he had emailed me back and said, Lou, we don't want you to do that. You never know what you're going to get, which is true. And so we'll cut the price in half. So one phone call saved me $500. Went from $1,000 to $500. When I got the work done, and I'm not throwing rocks at my dentist. He's a good guy. But he's working in a system of insurances here, and no insurance and insurances and regulations that are jacking the prices up. So when I went in to get the work done, they did wonderful work, and it was done in less than an hour and a half, and it was for $500. And yeah, I know what we're paying for when we pay for. I'm not cheap. I'm willing to pay for good medical care, right? I think most people are. But my question is when the government gets out of it and lets competition occur, prices come down. It happens in every realm. It's just like right now the price of gas is coming down because President Trump, whether you like him or not, has reduced regulations and allowed drilling in areas that they weren't drilling before. They're not like destroying pristine lands. Some of it's just federal land. It isn't like, it's like I got to thinking under Obama that federal land wasn't mine. Federal land, if you live in the United States, you're a citizen of the United States, you're an owner of federal land, along with 350 million other people. That's your land. It's not Obama's land. It's not the Democrats' land. It's not the Republicans' land. It's not a bureaucrat's land. So federal land just means land that actually is in a state that the state allowed the feds to manage for them. There really is only one type of land, and it's state land or private property. And the states has ceded temporary control to the feds. And so when Obama says you're not going to drill on federal land, or we're going to make it so hard to drill you won't apply for a permit, pretty soon people say, but we're just not going to go that route. We waste too much money fighting government. So when Trump comes in and he lists some of those regulations, or he lists the coal regulation, and 60,000 men go back to work, there might be some women in there, but 60,000 workers go back into the mines and are so thrilled about it because they don't want to be on public assistance. They like to work for a living, and they have pride. And so they go to work. Think about it. That's like 5 Marysvilles, counting the kids and the adults, just by lightening up regulations. We're not getting a dirty coal plant like they have in China. I don't know whether you've ever traveled in China. I have, by train, numbers of times, all the way across the eastern side of China, from Guangzhou all the way up to Beijing, Shanghai, all those routes. And you go through some areas, I'm telling you, you talk about where the area, there's nothing you can see but blackness. That's not how coal is operated here. It's just a lie of the Democrats. And so what we're talking about with health care is this over-regulation and the government just telling you what to do. Now, here's the problem. How do we get here? In 1987, let me tell you one of the crazy things. In 1987, the Congress said to all hospitals, if somebody comes to your hospital, whether they belong in this country or not, you have to treat them whether they have insurance or have any money. You got to treat them, even if you have to treat them free. And we'll work out the difference with you, and we'll compensate you some. That created a problem right there, folks. When the government is giving away free benefits, they have a right to control your life. When you're on welfare, when you're on one of these medical insurances, Medicare, Medicaid, Medi-Cal, the government has a right to speak into your life. And so if the government is picking up the tab on your lung surgery or your diabetes treatment or whatever they're picking up the tab on, they have a right to tell you what to eat, how fast to run, where to smoke, how to smoke, prohibit you from smoking, talk about how much alcohol you drink, how much you weigh. They can tell you need to lose 100 pounds. They can take away your freedom. What is freedom? Eating something I don't want, eating whatever I want whenever I want to eat it, smoke whatever I want. You know, I have never been a smoker. Kind of makes me sick, actually, being around it. But everybody in my family smoked. And I just thought everybody in America smoked but me. And there's something in me that says people ought to have a right to smoke, even smoke in bars. Like, I think there should be able to have a bar that's a smoking bar. If they want to attract all the smokers in town, let them have a smoking bar. But then there's the other side of me that says, well, but they're not taking care of their health problems themselves. Maybe they don't have insurance and they go into ER and I have to pay for their treatment because I pay for my treatment. I've always paid for my treatment. I've had health insurance, or I paid out of my pocket, or I end up on Medicare, which I pay for. And I've paid in the system for years and years and years. So why should, once the government starts picking up the tab on, for instance, health insurance, on health of people, say, oh, they don't need to pay. We got this one. Then, like, if they want to charge you, I think this pack of cigarettes, people tell me now, is up to $9 a pack. I remember it was 25 cents a pack. When I go to Vietnam in a few days, I'll be able to buy a pack of cigarettes there for 90 cents. Same packs we have here. I want you to think about that. So you think that they think that the cigarette usage in California has really dropped off? Maybe it has. Maybe it hasn't. Maybe they're just getting their smoke somewhere else. All they can tell is how many cigarettes are being bought, not how many are being smoked. So I want you to think about that. When we give up our freedom in one area, we also are giving up our freedom in another area. I'll talk more about that when we come back.
So check this out, y'all. Y'all not gonna believe this. So Bill Clinton got a black son. And guess what? He not even trying to take care of him. So I'm calling on Black Lives Matter to tell Bill Clinton he need to take care of his son. Bill and Hillary always running around talking about Black Lives Matter. Well, I'm trying to figure something out. Bill Clinton, your son black. What, he don't matter to you? I'm trying to figure out if Black Lives Matter, all Black lives need to matter. You got a black son out here that needs you, and he looking for you. But instead, you take care of Chelsea. She don't look nothing like you, and she's not even your real daughter, Bill Clinton. So, you know what? I need Obama. I need Al Sharpton. I need Jesse Jackson. I need all three of y'all to tell y'all best friend Bill that he need to see about his son, okay? Black Lives Matter. He need to take care of his black son, okay? Then check this out also here, Bill. Once you go black, you never go back, okay? We know you was in the hood when you was campaigning in the ghetto, sleeping with all them black women. I'm gonna tell you this right now. Black women don't forget who they slept with, and they gonna make sure that they get their check. She gonna make sure she get her child support check, Bill. You owe back child support. And on top of that, this young man needs you in his life, Bill. You been gone, Bill. Where you been, Bill? Making all that Clinton cash. Where you been, Bill? Your son needs you, Bill. So you need to do something about that, you old deadbeat. Bill Clinton ain't nothing but a deadbeat. You know what? I ain't never met my daddy. Bill Clinton might be my daddy. I don't know. He don't claim his black kid, so I don't know if he's my daddy or not, you know? But get this, though. If you are black and you looking for your daddy, Bill Clinton, if you was born in the 90s or the 80s, Bill Clinton might be your daddy. If you don't listen here, if you mix, Bill Clinton might be your daddy, okay? If you don't know your daddy, he might be your daddy. I'm telling you right now. Because Bill Clinton slept with a whole lot of black women in the ghetto, in the hood. He might be your daddy. And you know what? And I wrote down some traits, some personality traits that can tell you if Bill Clinton, if it's a possibility, if he your daddy. So if you love balloons, Bill Clinton might be your daddy, okay? Because he loved, y'all seen them when he was on them drugs, and he seen them balloons. If you're a con artist, he might be your daddy. If you are a manipulator, he might be your daddy. If you are sexually frustrated all the time, Bill Clinton might be your daddy. You know, happened with Monica Lewinsky, you know, he actually got a problem. He got a sex problem. You know, he like get their head and all that stuff. So if you like all that, Bill, if you love that and you addicted to that, Bill Clinton, it's a great possibility that he might be your daddy. If you love money and power, that's your daddy. If you smoke them drugs, smoke that weed, smoke that cocaine, he could be your daddy. That's a trait in the Clintons. They love smoking them drugs, so that might be your daddy. So all I'm asking for is Bill Clinton, I will pay for the DNA test if you take it, Bill, okay? I will pay for it. You don't even got to use none of your Clinton cash for it. I will pay for you to take that DNA. But you need to stop being a deadbeat. You need to step your ass up and take care of your black son, because you know what, like y'all always say, Black Lives Matter, so take care of your black son's life, okay? That's all I'm asking for, Bill.
All right. We're back. We're talking about freedom here today, and how us humans, we just we can get ourselves in a pickle is what we can get. And sometimes we think, oh, I'm going to get me some of that. And then we get some of that. We think, oh, I didn't know I had to do that to get that. So it used to be like when people took welfare, then they were liable to be accused of welfare fraud if they were like sneaking some cash on the side, or the guy was living with them and really they claimed they weren't living with them, and they would get arrested for welfare fraud. And I've even seen women go to prison for welfare fraud. Now, unfortunately, in Sutter County, they don't do that anymore. They don't check up on people. And people, you can come in from another county and cross over here and sign up for welfare over here and just make up an address and start collecting that money. And no one ever drops by to see if there's an address there that you're living at. Maybe you're not living there. So it's interesting how all this works. But in government, this whole health thing is interesting to me. Once people surrender their personal responsibility, the founding fathers felt this. Was it Thomas Jefferson or Benjamin Franklin that says to the lady when they came out of the meeting where they voted for the Republic and the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence, said something like, "We've given you a republic, let's see if you can maintain it." That's a mouthful right there. I mentioned last week that one of the founders, I think it was Franklin, said, once people figure out that you can vote yourself money or benefits, it's the beginning of the end. I think we're neck deep in this thing right now of people figuring out how they can get the government to pay for their well-being, pay for their groceries. You can get the government to pay for you having a baby and then feed the baby for you through the WIC. Pay for it through Medi-Cal or Medicaid or something, and then pay for it through WIC. Infant, women and infant care, right? Free food for mom and the kid. It's like, wait a minute, I thought people were supposed to have children and plan on raising them themselves as a partner. And now the government just, oh no, we don't need a father. The government could be your father. We don't need work. Government can provide. We can get a house for $900, but you just have to pay $50 for it. So once people, and I saw this directly at the church when I worked there, people called and they would ask a question. Like, it was just phenomenal. I just used to marvel. I loved the position at the church. They would send all these calls to me, and I loved it. They would say, isn't there some fund in town to pay for burying people? Or isn't there some fund to cover this or cover that or pay my PG&E bill that I haven't paid in 6 months? And PG&E, I hate them. They're like bastards, those PG&E guys. And yet they've been supplying PG&E for months and never got a nickel from these people, and they're the nasty ones, right? I get such a kick out of this. So when you give up your freedom for a handout, you sell your soul to the devil is basically what you're doing. And you allow the government, when I went to Moscow right after the fall of communism, and people literally did not know what to do with their lives. Because for 70 years, think of it, it's 70 years if we had a change in this country. And they said, you don't need to you'll never have to look for work again. You'll never have to worry about your utilities again. You'll never have to worry about not being paid again. We don't pay very well, but we'll definitely pay you. You're not going to have to fight with your employer over pay. We'll always have a job for you. You're guaranteed. Never have to look. You'll never be unemployed. The problem is you gave up all your freedom. Free school, free this, free that, free this, free medical. We'll abort your babies for you, free. But for that, you got no freedom, no choice, and very little money. So when they said we're no longer going to do it that way, and now you need to go to work, figure out a job to do, because there were no private enterprises in Soviet Union or Russia now. When they changed it over, they called it Russia and separated off all the satellite countries. And they said, now you need to go earn a living. And they thought, earn a living? We just went to where you told us to do some work and gave a half-hearted effort, and we always just got a check no matter how hard we worked. So then when they said, now you got to go earn a living and pay for your own stuff, go get your own stuff, figure out how to get it, and pay for your schooling, pay for this, pay for that, people just got totally confused and discombobulated. And rightfully so, the old people wanted to go back to communism and give up all their freedom just so they got the guaranteed check and everything was back the way it was. they were comfortable with what they'd known. Now in this country, even though we have not had a violent revolution, we've done it inch by inch. And we have offered people free. Just sign up. In fact, I get a kick out of these welfare workers, these social workers saying, please come in and get food stamps. You probably qualify if you live in Yuma or Sutter County. Please. You know why? Because they're sucking on the same tit everybody is. The county gets federal money. The more food stamps they give away, the more money they get. What a corrupted system. What a screwed up mess. And we have college graduates out hawking welfare stamps or food stamps and welfare. Come and get it. Well, my goodness, you deserve this and you're guaranteed that, and just sign up here and just sign there. And now you don't even have to turn in, I heard you don't even have to turn in income reports each month to get food stamps and welfare. You just let it go on out there for a quarter, half year, and then they don't even check by the house. They just give away money. It's amazing. So when you give away that, though, then government can come in and say, well, this is kind of health fair. We don't offer this. We just offer that. And this is what you get. This is all you're going to get. And no, we're not going to operate on you because it's just too expensive at your age to operate on you, and we're not going to do that. And we don't think it's going to work out anyway. So it's not your choice. It's the government's choice. So when the government comes in and they're giving you that lung operation, then they can, and they're paying for it, they have a right to say, yeah, you can't smoke, or we're going to charge you $20 a pack to smoke. Say, yeah, we can't really tell you can't smoke. That's prohibition, and that's kind of against our beliefs. But instead of telling you can't smoke, we're going to charge you $20 a pack, $40 a pack, $100 a pack. So this article says that the amount of cigarettes since the new law went into effect, boosting the price of cigarettes to an average of $9 a pack, that the amount of cigarettes being shipped to the retailers is really dropped off. No one's talking about the black market where people are buying cigarettes from other states. In fact, people I run into are buying cigarettes from the Indian casinos or Native American casinos, which are way cheaper because they're not saddled with all those taxes. Or they're bringing them from other states. They're bringing them in by the 52-foot truckload. I want you to think about that. And they could get arrested and go to prison. Do you understand what we're doing? We're arresting people for selling a legal product. But because of government bureaucracy and stupid regulations and creating socialism, so if we pay for your health care, then we can tell you what you can put in your body. Can you violate that? Yeah, you can violate it. You can sneak around and shoot heroin, and yet the government will still pay for your health care. You can shoot crank, snort crank. Government still pay for that. And actually, if you do it long enough, they won't even send you to jail anymore. Like right now, we're discussing this whole thing of homelessness. Right now, we're right on the threshold of just providing everything. Like, why would anybody want to work or go get a career? Because we're right on the threshold of doing what Russia had, is providing a home, utilities, food, and health care and education for free. And we'll maybe ask the able-bodied people to go do something somewhere. But it'll end up being like it was in North Vietnam and South Vietnam after the communists took over. And my friend Thuy Nguyen said, Lou, we were so poor, there wasn't enough money to go around. We were so poor, we ate insects. And she said the government stupidly would ask people that had no skill in farming to go work for a rice farm. So they'd go out there in the morning, have a couple smokes, work a little bit, have some tea, work a little bit more, have a little lunch, work a little bit more, and come on home and not accomplish much. So the agricultural production output collapsed in the entire nation, and they were starving to death and eating bugs and animals like dogs. First time I went to Vietnam in the early 90s, you couldn't find a dog. If I ever saw a dog, I thought, man, that dude is a survivor. Little skinny mutts. Like, the rest of them were barbecued. So it's interesting. I'm really fascinated with what's going to happen. I know that in New York, they're bringing cigarettes in by the truckload and selling them on the black market. And so now that creates a whole level of lawbreakers and a whole level of people we call ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms investigators and cops to come and throw some handcuffs on you. And cause you to go to prison. Because what? Because you're selling cigarettes in competition essentially with the government. The government essentially selling these cigarettes. Yeah, Joe down at the 7-Eleven or the Quick Stop or the cheaper cigarettes. Yeah, there's some guy named Joe or Frida or something. But really it's the government. They're setting the taxes. They're really establishing the price. They've driven the price up. They're setting all the regulations. What the packaging is like. They've actually determined every bit about that product. And you have the impression that you own the business or you run the business. Really, the government is controlling every aspect of that business. What time it opens, what time. I just was talking to Kumar Kairam, who is the owner of the Washington Avenue Market, because the government jacked him around for years in the city of Yuba City and cost him tens of thousands of dollars a year, and had the arrogance to question whether it cost him a nickel. They've never run any business. And I was shocked at looking at all the rules and regulations of the alcohol beverage control. Well, you have to have a special license to sell that bottle, and you have to have a special license to sell that can, and you have to have a special license if you want to do this, and you have to have a special license if you want to sell that quantity. And, of course, every little license has a fancy fee that comes with it, and, of course, then you have these high-tech or highly schooled investigators that come around to come after you and come after your business and cite you for every little infraction. Can you imagine? I mean, Trump, in just a matter of a couple of months, has changed the economy of the United States by just eliminating stupid regulations. Can you imagine what it would be like if government would get out of the way? You know, government doesn't create any jobs. I was thinking this morning of all the new businesses that are starting. How does government benefit them? I couldn't figure out one benefit. I couldn't. Maybe you could figure out a benefit. But basically, government, if they buy property, they bought the property, they have to get a series of permits from government to do anything on the property. And first they got to get a traffic study, a dust study, a noise study, a sign study, sign approval. They have to get approval for the design of the building. They got to get approval if alcohol can be sold in that area. They have to get special approval from the health department for a kitchen. They got to get building inspection. Let's see. They have to get special approval to connect to the sewer out in the middle of the street. All these things cost lots of money. If the type of business they have is not typical for that area, they have to get what they call a use permit, or they have to get a variance. These steps take months and tens of thousands of dollars. Some people just give up after spending a lot of money and just forget about it. All these steps are hindrances to free enterprise and businesses thriving. You think, well, don't you think we ought to have some regulation? Maybe some. But I don't think a lot of what's being done is helping the community or helping business or helping protect people. You know something? Have you ever had the flu? I get it every once in a while. I've learned from doctors that a lot of times what we have isn't the flu, it's food poisoning. You know that? You either poisoned yourself by not taking care of the food you cook or prepare properly. You don't take care of it properly. Don't have it cold enough or whatever. Or you didn't check it by your sniffer, smell it. Or you picked up a bug from the fast food restaurant you went to or the restaurant you went to. Or maybe you at the church potluck. My friend Dr. Cassidy he's a church guy. He said, Lou, I never eat at church potlucks. I thought it was hilarious. I said, you never eat at a church potluck. He said, no, man. He said, you can get sick really easy at a potluck. And I thought, well, maybe I have got sick at a potluck. I don't know. I don't ever remember getting sick right after a potluck. But his point was that you don't know how the food was prepared. You don't know how it was refrigerated or cared for. And you don't know whether it was kept at a proper temperature getting there. But my point is that in a restaurant, you know, everybody should travel to and eat and hang out in a third world country at least once a year. You know why? It's a reality. It's a check-in with reality. I've eaten at restaurants, food carts, sitting on the sidewalk while cars were going right within 10 feet of me, splashing water and crazy stuff going on. People cooking right out there over cooked things out in the open, right on the street. Close off streets, eat it right out on the street. Nobody's got permits. Are you kidding me? You don't know where that chicken's coming from or anything else that's involved. And you know what my test is on whether I should eat there? I look at how many other people are on board. My mother would say, well, if Johnny runs off the cliff, that means you're going to run off the cliff too? Well, a lot of those people seem to be happy in eating there. But honestly, you've seen all these restaurants, they have all these health certificates, da-da-da-da. Does it make sure they're going to all perform at a high level? Not necessarily. People do what people do. My point is, what does government do that actually has a benefit for you? I don't know. I think of what Dr. Cassidy did with the health department, and I think some of the things are probably helpful. Stopping communicable diseases like tuberculosis. I mean, you know, somebody had to go out there and put a stamp on it or help track down all the people someone had sex with after they realized they were HIV positive or they had gonorrhea or chlamydia or something, and try to curb the spread of venereal disease. I think there's some warrant in that. It's kind of like a health police officer, right? I think the Bible says we need law enforcement. And I think probably we need a professional fire department, you know, even though we got by with years with a volunteer fire department, but I don't think people are going to go for this volunteer police department. We have reserves. But I think what we do, when you look at, you know, I see there's an article in the paper here recently in the Appeal Democrat. It says counties need more available property for businesses, and it's talking about the flourishing of construction in Sutter County. I thought, I feel bad for all those people constructing stuff because it's a pain to deal with the county in general, you know, city and county. And trying to put up a whole business. You can have I just recently had a great experience with Sutter County, and we're putting up a solar project at Church of Glad Tidings, and I was working with the fire chief and Sutter County building inspection. They were really great and realistic and fair and helpful. They were awesome. All of them. They were awesome. Easy to deal with, easy to get a hold of. They were just like working with a private business. Customer service friendly. But we weren't starting no business. And I just think, man, I pity people trying to start a business today. It's just like you ever seen one of those deals where people stand in line and they beat you as you run down that aisle of people? It's called running the gauntlet or something. That's how I feel to start a business is. So anyway, well, I'm running out of time. I was going to talk, maybe I'll fit this into one of the other shows. We got a show to do here in a few days live. So I'll hold the next topic. But anyway, I want to thank you for listening. And again, thank you for putting up with this pre-recorded show, those that are picky about those kind of things. And you can call in and leave a message for the Big Kahuna. He'll get it. He listens to them. If you got a complaint, or he never tells me the good stuff. He just tells me the complaints. So if you want to fire off a complaint, I know then you're listening. So we appreciate your being involved in this community, and the worst thing you can do is do nothing. So do something, make a contribution, stand up for what you believe in. We'll be back next week.